So, if you're still for some reason planning a trip to the United States, whether you're from Canada, Europe, or anywhere else in the world, what I'm going to show you in this video might actually change your plans. Because good old Grandpa Don and the US government is now taking DNA samples for the visitors that cross. And you don't even have to have a criminal record or anything on your file or anything like that. But in this video, I'm going to tell the story of a 68-year-old Canadian who wanted to attend the No Kings protest last year. And this story actually got the attention of some US Congress members, although I don't think anything's going to happen from it. So let's take a look at the story from Kevin Larson.
Kevin Larson has traveled to the U.S. many times over the years without issue, but that's all changed now. In October, he tried to cross at the Blue Water Bridge near Sarnia to attend a No Kings rally in Michigan.
I have been very concerned with the Trump administration, calling us the 51st state, the tariffs. We have been allies for generations and friends, and he's just thrown it out the window.
Now, it looks like Kevin has the same views when it comes to the United States as most of us, and he understands the issues that are being caused by the US administration, to the point where he actually wants to cross the border and support the No Kings protest. I'm all for that, but one thing I won't do is cross the border, and that's where all his problems started. So to all my haters that are basically saying, why don't you come down to the US and support us? Well, this video is going to tell you exactly why I don't want to. And to be honest, this should be a warning to all Canadians as well as international viewers that are thinking about still going to the United States.
Larson says U.S. border officers held him for 3 hours, denied him entry, and told him he needed to give a DNA sample before he could go home.
I said no. I consider that a privacy thing. I'm not going to do it. And then they explained, sir, if you don't give us a DNA sample, we can charge you. And it would be an offense if you're found guilty, something like that.
He says he was rattled and eventually gave in part out of fear of getting banned from future trips.
Now, one thing I'm just confused about the whole thing is, why do they actually need the DNA? Because I've mentioned in other videos that when you're traveling to other countries, they're going to take your biometrics as well as your photos. I actually don't have any problems with that, because a lot of airports have these kiosks now where you can just put your thumbprint on, take a picture, and then you're done with immigration after that. There's not really a way to avoid it if you want to visit that country. I know it might be an issue for some people, but for me, it's actually not. But when it comes to the United States, the issue that I have is the government that's actually holding all of this information. Your biometrics, your facial recognition, your DNA now. Because we know the US government isn't that thorough when it comes to, holding your data. I mean, to give you an example, the FBI director, Kash Patel, just had his personal email hacked and everything is on the internet now. And just from some of the photos that I've seen that have been leaked, this guy's just a frat boy. I mean, that's who's running the FBI right now. But aside from the data possibly being leaked or hacked, my question is, with the United States government, and we know the reputation right now, what is the actual need for a foreigner to spit in a tube and collect your DNA? The only reason I can think of is that they're going to weaponize your data.
Now, his story has caught the eye of American lawmakers.
I read the story on Saturday and was outraged because I grew up in that area. And we went back and forth in the summer every day.
Dingle and fellow Democratic Representative Jamie Raskin penned a letter to the administration this week demanding to know why Larson had to give a DNA sample, despite having no known criminal history, calling it hostile and arbitrary treatment at the border that could further damage one of our most important bilateral relationships.
I don't know why, but this makes me laugh a little bit inside. Because every time you think the damage can be any worse than it is right now between our two countries, it's like the United States government says, hold my beer, let me damage it even more.
U.S. Customs and Border Protection didn't respond to an interview request, but the agency's rules state they collect DNA samples from all persons arrested on federal criminal charges and from aliens in CBP custody who are subject to fingerprinting. But that doesn't include aliens held at a point of entry during consideration of admissibility and not subject to further detention or proceedings.
So in other words, CBP, they're just going to do whatever they want at the border. So if you want to go and you get stopped and they ask you for a DNA swab, you're going to have to do it. Otherwise, you're going to get banned from the United States or even detained. I don't know. They'll probably end up making the rules on the spot.
Larson says he doesn't need an apology, he just wants his DNA removed from the database. He's also optimistic about the future of the Canada-US relationship. Larson says he's crossed once since October and was held in Detroit for an hour before he was allowed to enter the country. Now, he says he won't be making any trips to the U.S. until the administration changes.
Now, I know a lot of you are probably asking, why the hell did he go again after this situation? Well, this next report I'm going to show you actually goes into a little bit more detail. And we actually hear more from, what's his name? Oh, Kevin Larson, on why he actually went back again after. But before I show the next report, I would like to give another thanks to Michael, who in my earlier video today, I featured one of his other photos. But this one is taken from Burnaby Mountain overlooking downtown Vancouver. And this one, it means a lot to me, because this used to be my old stomping grounds. Yes, I used to be one of those little punk kids in the past that would go there at night and drink. But in the winter, when it was covered in snow, we'd take a toboggan and go all the way down the hill. But we wouldn't drink and toboggan at the same time. No, that's something we didn't do. At least I don't think we did. Anyways, I want to thank you, Michael, for sending this photo. I always love seeing photos from home. Okay, so continue on with the story with Kevin Larson. He explains a little bit more on why he actually still goes, well, not still, but went to the United States after that, but also gives more details on what they were asking for.
He was forced to provide a DNA sample when trying to cross the border into the U.S. late last year. As Scott Miller reports, he was denied entry, and it's not clear what grounds, if any, those agents had to demand his DNA.
Kevin Larson's DNA is now in the hands of the U.S. government. On October 18th, the Kincardine native was heading to a No Kings rally in Port Huron when he was pulled over for a random check at the U.S. border crossing. What happened next shocked him.
They took my picture, took my fingerprints, and about 2.5 hours in, they said, we're not going to allow you entry, but first you have to give a DNA sample. I said no twice. I sat down, and then a supervisor took me to a private room, read me the riot act and the law, and said I can be charged, and if found guilty, it could be up to 1 year in prison.
Now, my question is, charged for what? Well, we all know that if you're in a situation and you're sitting at that CBP office, you're not going to get any help from anybody. So what are your options? You either comply or get arrested. But, what are you getting arrested for? Not spitting in a tube?
The retired health physicist knew he wasn't a criminal and didn't want to go to jail, so he gave the border guards what they wanted, his DNA.
I did say yes because I had heard that if you push back at the border, you can end up with a 5-year ban on going into the States. And I have a cousin in Georgia that we visit regularly, so I submitted to a DNA check.
Now, I've always said on my channel that if you have to go to the United States for family reasons, I don't have a problem with that. I mean, family is family. But you do have to realize that things are different now. And what we were used to before is not the same as it is now.
Larson has no criminal background and says he was carrying nothing but a Canadian flag to the No Kings rally in Port Huron. 3,000 such rallies were held last year across the U.S.
At the very end, I talked to the main officers dealing with. So I said, cut to the chase. What's the main reason I'm not being allowed admission? And he said it was the purpose of your visit, sir. They somehow saw a Canadian with a flag as a threat to their country, and I don't get it.
Well, I get it. The U.S. is a fascist country, and they don't want anything that might ruin their reputation. But so much for free speech, right?
Two U.S. Congress members have taken up Larson's case, asking U.S. lawmakers why he was detained and what the DNA is being used for. Now, there's supposed to be another No Kings rally happening in Port Huron this weekend. Larson isn't going to risk trying to cross the border again, so he's going to hold his own No Kings rally here in Grey Bruce.
The purpose of that rally is let people in the States know they have friends. We're not calling for regime change.
A month after being forced to give up his DNA at the U.S. border, Larson actually attempted to cross the border again to visit family, this time successfully.
I was there for an hour. They looked at my phone. They reviewed the records, but they did let us go in.
In Kincardine, Scott Miller, CTV News.
Now, I'm all for the No Kings protest, and I do hope that this time around, the crowd is a lot bigger than the previous two. But if you haven't watched my earlier video when I talk about the No Kings protest, you might want to check it out after this video. But these last two reports that I just showed you kind of put the nail in the coffin. For any US citizens that say that Canadians have no right to complain, or that we should go down and help them protest. Well, if there was a protest back in Vancouver and I was back home, I might show up and, just show my solidarity for those that are actually fighting in the United States. but there's no way in hell that you're going to get me to cross the border to attend one of your protests. But if you are a Canadian and you are insisting on going to the No Kings protest in the US, it might be a good idea to buy that Canadian flag in the United States so the CBP guards don't see it. This is not like professional advice. I mean, it's just kind of common sense. Okay, that's all I got for today's video. If you found any value in anything I said today, or you want to hear more from a Canadian and international point of view without the US media bias, make sure you hit that like and subscribe button below. That way you're notified of my future videos. And if you want to see more of my videos, check out the ones that'll show up on your screen shortly. Thanks everyone. I'll catch you in the next one.